Jonathon Keats is going to start us off this morning, and then Jonathan's going to do a brown bag upstairs in the sky room with me over lunch. So Jonathan's a complicated guy. He's a conceptual artist and experimental philosopher. So first of all, that you kind of scratch your head and say, experimental philosophy, what does that mean? Well, he tried to sell real estate in the space-time continuum proposed by string theory. He tried to grow God in a laboratory so he could place God on a phylogenetic chart. He copyrighted his own mind so that he could get another 70-year extension, which is the copyright law, right? So Jonathon his practice is basically to encourage curiosity by amateurs, to make all of us participate in the world in a way that is full of curiosity and experimentation. And he really invents these kind of wonder devices that are sometimes thought experiments and sometimes actual objects. And somehow along the way he finds time to be a book critic, an art critic, and then he writes his own books. The last book is this highly unauthorized biography of Buckminster Fuller that really kind of opens up what's the life of, as Bruce said this morning, what's the life of a man who, every 45 minutes stopped and wrote down everything he thought about, right? So Jonathon is an extraordinary a friend of the museum, and he's someone we're going to be working with in collaboration with the Long Now Foundation in a project that he's going to describe. And Jonathon, along with Bruce, these are our speculators in residence. These are the people who propel us into conversations we never thought we were going to have. Jonathon, come on up.
Thank you, Bill. Here in Reno right now, it is 9:09 a.m. on Saturday, October 21st, 2017. At least that's the time and date according to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, precisely calibrated by the measurement of cesium atoms on atomic clocks in Boulder, Colorado. 9:09 a.m., October 21st, 2017. I have my doubts. It's not that I doubt the integrity of the National Institute of Standards and Technology or the precision of their atomic clocks. I just wonder whether it makes sense to impose such an abstract and invariant conception of time on our living planet, and what the implications are for our society and the environment. Obviously, time wasn't always calibrated by the vibration of cesium atoms. In pre-classical Greece, time was kept by cicadas' songs and the flowering of artichokes, the migration of cranes. Ballads recounted these annual events and provided their interpretation. Constellations also provided guidance, but celestial authority was contingent. Days were arbitrarily added as the stars fell out of sync with nature. Gradually, society made calendars more regular. First the moon was used and then the sun. Julius Caesar improved reliability of solar timekeeping by introducing the leap year. We're now on the Gregorian calendar, in which the year is exactly 365.2425 days in duration. Of course, the Gregorian calendar is useful for keeping appointments and for managing multinational corporations. It aids efficiency and helps development. The question is whether this corporatized world is a world we want to inhabit, and whether it's a world that will remain habitable for much longer. I have an alternate plan. Instead of observing cesium atoms, I propose to look at living trees. Trees are natural calendars. Every year they grow a new ring, and you can determine their age by counting. But that's not all that the rings indicate. As dendroclimatologists have learned, the thickness of each ring is a measure of environmental conditions in a given year. So the growing girth of a tree is an indication of time, but one that varies with the changing climate. I'd like you to imagine a sapling. Imagine a young bristlecone pine tree with an expected lifespan of as many as 5,000 years. Around that tree, which happens to be the longest living complex organism on the planet, you might put a spiral of markers made out of titanium, regularly spaced in 500-year increments, based on the estimated girth of the tree in 500 years, 1,000 years, and more, if future growth rates were to remain the same as in the present. And you might mark each indicator with a year the tree would touch if the climate didn't change. Then you might stand back and give the tree authority. The tree will almost certainly grow out of sync with the Gregorian years. For instance, if it grows faster in the future because of rising carbon dioxide, it might tell you that the year is 3500 when your Hallmark kitten calendar says it's 3127. The idea I'm proposing to you this morning is that we accept what the tree says. We can choose to live on bristlecone time. Now, bristlecone pine trees grow only in very remote areas. One of the best sites is atop Mount Washington in eastern Nevada, where the Long Now Foundation happens to own a vast tract of land. The bristlecone calendar will be sited there. In fact, there will be several, each enlisting trees of different ages and measuring different time increments. That said, few people will ever venture to Mount Washington. The drive is long, as is the hike. The elevation is more than 11,000 feet. So it seems important to me also to bring bristlecone time into the city. Imagine that one of the bristlecone pine saplings on Mount Washington is rigged with an electronic dendrometer, an instrument that wraps around the tree trunk, precisely measuring diameter. Data from the dendrometer will be relayed by satellite to a computer that will calculate the exact date and time based on the tree's real-time change in girth. The computer will control a monumental mechanical calendar situated at the Nevada Museum of Art. The mechanical calendar will take the form of a cylindrical table hewn out of the white limestone found on Mount Washington. The table will be 12 feet in diameter. In other words, it will have the same girth as a bristlecone pine tree will have in 5,000 years. Inside the table's glass base will be a clockwork that will turn at a variable rate, as much or as little as the growth of the bristlecone. The clockwork will turn a titanium indicator, long and slender, like the minute hand on a clock. The indicator will be designed to telescope. The telescoping will be guided by a spiral groove in the limestone, spiraling out from the center to the edge. Incised in the stone along the curve of the spiral will be numbers corresponding to the calendar years anticipated based on the current growth rate of the tree. In other words, the indicator will show the actual radius of the tree and will point to the anticipated date. The discrepancy between bristlecone time and Gregorian time will be visible as a mismatch between the indicator and the Gregorian calendar. Visitors will be able to determine the bristlecone calendar date precisely by reading numbering on the gears. Additionally, since not everyone lives in Reno, the signal going to the mechanical calendar will be available to anyone anywhere as a new time protocol, a protocol equivalent to network time protocol maintained by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. The arboreal protocol will allow people to put their smartwatches, their computers, and their entire lives onto bristlecone time. And I can tell you that it won't be business as usual. Time will be irregular. Future planning will have an element of unpredictability. In the winter, as the tree naturally shrinks, time will turn backward. Why would anyone do this? I think there are several reasons. First, when we superimpose atomic time on the planet, we implicitly assert control over the world. We take charge of nature. And looking at the environmental ruin of the Anthropocene, that doesn't seem to be turning out so well. Second, the regular time of cesium clocks gives us a false illusion of being able to predict the future. the bristlecone calendars, time is alive with contingencies, and we come to terms with where prediction fails us, the limitations of what we can know about the future, and the threat of hubris. Third, with the bristlecone calendar, there is the possibility of interacting with deep time. There is the possibility of changing the future based on our present behavior. Recently, I initiated another long-term project in Phoenix at the Arizona State University Art Museum. I designed a camera to take a 1,000-year-long exposure. The camera documents the changing environment, and this documentation can potentially be seen by far future generations. But equally important, we are aware that the camera is out there, recording the decisions we make, and that it may alter how we behave. It's a kind of technological prosthesis that lets us consider our actions from the perspective of future generations. Likewise, our actions will affect bristlecone time. And while we need to be aware of our hubris, we also need to be aware that we have choices and responsibilities. Time can guide us. So where do we go from here? How do we begin this 5,000-year project, this epic quest? I'll be addressing these questions in conversation with Bill Fox over lunch today, and also sharing photos of Mount Washington, as well as my initial renderings of the bristlecone calendar. And I hope that you can join me. It will be at 12:20 p.m. At least that's the time according to cesium atoms. Time will tell what time it will be when the bristlecones take over. Thank you.